While John's writing and getting set up, let's give a round of applause for Adam. Great worship. I need to kill time.
Did you say communication? Somebody say communication?
Yeah. Okay, what else?
Boy.
Speech. When you think speech, what are you thinking? Anything. Talking. Words. Communicating. Sentences. Message. So, we'll do conduct as well. Conduct.
Conduct's a big word.
Conduct's a big word, especially for people like Riley, who may not know what that is. So, what is conduct? What do you guys think conduct is? Just ideas, again. Whatever you got. Behavior, like it. Tone? Is that what you said?
No, I said tone.
Oh, tone? Sorry. I'm sorry. Tone? Attitude. I think manners. I don't know why. I just think manners. Mannerisms.
Manner.
Cold
Tone.
tone, that word.
Mannerisms? Manner?
What do you guys think the Webster Dictionary definition for conduct and speech is? Just like, give me your most eloquent sentence, Mason. Okay, never mind. But just, these are some ideas, and this is the actual definition. For conduct, it's a mode or standard of personal behavior, especially as based on moral principles. You gonna write that whole thing?
No,
my days.
I'm going to give the bullet points.
Okay, because that, I'm about to say, you're not writing out that whole thing, and I'm not going to fill time on that. That'd be awful. And speech is the communication or expression of thoughts in spoken words. So we're gonna dive into that. But what's something interesting is speech not conduct?
Is speech and conduct
A mode or standard of personal behavior, especially as based on moral principle. But Paul, in 1 Timothy 4:12, because Paul wrote 1 Timothy to Timothy, didn't know if you knew that, Paul makes a distinction of separating speech from conduct. We're going to get into why. John?
That's me. If there's Bibles underneath your seats, by the way, or in the seats ahead of you if you're not in the front row. If you want to open that up, we're going to dive into James. James 3, verses 3 through 10.
That's page 1200 or 1200 for those of you who don't speak the lingo of. Page 1200 or 1200 or 1200. Yep.
This is in the English Standard Version Bible, in case you guys are wondering. I know some of you might be poetry fans and use King James.
Looking at you, Austin.
NIV. Taming the tongue. So, you guys, if we want to have some volunteers, just so we can kind of split this up. If somebody wants to read, I would say, can somebody read 3 through 5, and then somebody else read 6 through 10? If we want to get 2 volunteers to do that.
Chapter 3. 3 through, 5 you said? All right,
3 through 5, and then
3 through 5, yeah.
6 through 10. Somebody else.
And then someone else do 6 through 10. Same chapter, obviously.
Steven? You want to do 6 through 10?
Great group of guys here. Great volunteers. Thank you, Steven.
Who's got 3 through 5?
Peer pressure him. The only time we're going to allow peer pressure, right now. Peer pressure him. You got it. Wait, who's going to do 3 through 5? You want to? Okay, stand up, read James.
Okay. Everybody listen, follow along in your Bibles. 3 through 5, and then 6 through 10. Yes.
3 through 5.
So when I first read this, and when I looked through this about 2 years ago with Billy. I walked through it back in the day when before PBC really had a youth group. 3 through 5 is kind of confusing. 6 through 10 is downright depressing. So we're gonna dissect that a little bit. There's a clear distinction, obviously, that speech and conduct are listed separately, even though they relate to one another. And there's definitively a reason that Paul chose to do that. And that can be seen here. So I want to throw you guys back to about like 2nd grade in elementary school with think before you speak. Do any of you guys remember that at all? There's probably posters around the elementary school. Okay, At the time, you probably like thought nothing of it because we were all ignorant back then, and we just it's like whatever. Think before you speak. You might have been a teacher's pet and be like, that person's being mean. But anywho, it's very important. It's very important. Although we may not have thought of it back then, it is very important that we be very careful with our speech and how we portray ourselves through that. So it's very clear. James 3 through 5. When it references a rudder of a ship, you have the ship's wheel, and it controls the rudder. Rudder is a tiny little flap of wood that moves back and forth, and it directs which direction the ship is going to go. In the same way, if you think of like a bit of a horse, or the bit in the mouth of a horse, the bit basically, with that, you can control where the horse's head goes and where the horse goes. Similarly, the tongue, or your speech, controls and dictates the rest of your body. In other words, if you cannot control what you say, then you have no control over anything that you do. That's a lot to take in. Obviously, I'm not saying that you can't do things like you're disabled or something and not physically be able to do something, but what I'm saying is that if you cannot control the way that you portray yourself with your words, you cannot portray yourselves with your actions. You cannot properly conduct yourself if you cannot even control your own speech. You can't control your thoughts because your thoughts aren't even controlling your speech. It's very clear that we need to make a clear and solid difference. We need to think ahead. We need to think about what we're saying. A lot of foresight and insight, what do we say, how we conduct ourselves. Part of that is also not being hypocritical for our speech. If we say that we truly believe in God, then we need to follow God in all that we do. That also means our speech. That's why you have to think ahead. You can't just be careless with your speech. You can't be careless with your thoughts or your actions. If you continue on in James 3 and 11, I'll just read it out here. Does spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. That's also speaking in riddles. It's kind of hard to understand. I want you to think about it like this, right? If you pour a bottle of Dasani water or any purified water into the ocean, can you then drink the ocean? No. You can't just have you can't have a little bit of godliness in your speech, pour out and purify all of the ungodliness that you said 15 minutes before. What am I trying to say with that? In the same way, you cannot speak in a way that glorifies God while also speaking in an unrighteous way. If you look at Ephesians 5 and 4, it says, Ephesians 5, 4, it says, let there be no filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving. In other words, be really careful with your speech, so that way you are always representing Christ in all that you do. Don't fall victim to the ways of the world. Think about what you say before you say it. This also brings up the idea of integrity. Integrity is a word that we've heard a lot, but we don't necessarily know what it means. It means being true to yourself and to upholding morals. See that? Morals, conduct, morals. Come back to that later. It means upholding your morals even when nobody else is around. That means you should have the same actions, the same speech, whether you're at church, whether you're at practice, whether you're at school, whether you're alone, whether you're with friends. That's really tough to do. That's something we all struggle with. You should leave here, you should probably be feeling kind of convicted right now. I do. So, it's very clear that speech is a part of conduct, because without control over our speech, we can't have control over our conduct. So now that we know that we need to treat speech with a lot of care and a lot of forethought, let's learn a little bit about how we should conduct ourselves.
That's me. That's my turn. That's his cue. John gave me chills when he stood up and started walking. We did not plan that out at all. Does someone want to open up to Philippians 1, verse 27 for me, please? And then someone else open up to Romans 6, Romans 6, verse 13, not chapter, sorry. We're going to read Philippians first, and then whoever's got Romans, you're going to hold on to that for a minute.
If you get either one of them, then you just call it out if you want to speak on it.
Anybody got Philippians? Cole's going to do Romans. He already told me just now. Chapter 1 in Philippians, verse 27. Anybody? Any dice? Is that the thing? Philippians 1, verse 27. Xander, you got it? Oh, you got it. Okay, can you stand up and can you read chapter 1, verse 27? Just that one singular verse in Philippians. Just 27. That's all you need, my guy.
Only let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of you that you are standing firm in one spirit, with one mind striving side by side for the faith of the gospel.
Thank you, Xander. That was Paul again, writing to the church in Philippi, I think is how you say it. But he hits on, that got loud. He hits on integrity again. Whether I come to see you or not, whatever I hear of the good works that you do. This obviously refers to conduct, acting in a good, godly manner. But most people are like, how do we know we're supposed to act in a godly manner? If you go all the way back to Genesis, I'm not going to have anybody read it, God created man. But he created man in his own image, meaning that we are supposed to be the image bearers of God here on earth. And since we are his image bearers, we need to act in a conduct and in a manner that glorifies him. But what example should we look to? It's kind of hard to live up to the perfection of God, obviously. All of us have fallen short. That's, again, in Romans. But the example we should look to is Christ. Christ is the visible God come down in the flesh, or the invisible God come down in the flesh. Any example of perfection of God, we should be looking to Christ as baseline. Any characteristic of God is shown in Christ. Christ was the perfect man in a perfect speech and perfect conduct. He should be the example we look to in all things. He's the perfecter of our faith, and he is the perfect man, the better Adam, not that Adam, but the first Adam. So to improve both our speech and our conduct, there's a couple steps we can take. We need to know the character of God, Christ. So to do that, we need to be reading our Bibles. That's how you're going to know about God, but as we talk about all the time here at PBC, it's not about knowing about God, it's also about knowing God personally. So that's why you also need to be praying. Praying is very important. That's how you build a relationship with God. Know about God and to know God are two very important things. Reading the Bible and praying are two important steps to do that. To do it in our daily lives and kind of have like a modern turn towards it, because sometimes in the Bible you read parables about fishermen or people sowing. It's like I'm not out there sowing seeds every day. I'm not out there actually fishing men. So what it is having a community around us is another step to take in order to have good speech and good conduct. That's why church, too, is also very, very important. A community around you of whether it be just friends that are Christian at your school or coming to church on Sunday mornings, these things are great tools and steps to help you work out a life of good speech and have good conduct. And obviously, you need to have Christ in your life, which is through prayer, asking God for changes to change your heart, change your mind, to improve your conduct. Through this good speech and good conduct, and through our relationship with God, we should see changes. These are called the fruits of the Spirit. These are in Philippians, or no, not Philippians, Galatians 5, I think.
Galatians 5.
Is that real? I think it is. Galatians 5, towards the tail end of it, talks about the fruits of the Spirit and peace, or love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Those are the fruits of the Spirit. With a relationship with God and the Holy Spirit inside you, you will produce those things through your conduct and through your speech. Those will be evident in your life. So it's very important to obviously have that in your life. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. But Cole, can you read Romans for me, please? Thanks, Cole. This, again, is talking about conduct, obviously. Don't present your members, don't present yourself as instruments of unrighteousness, but instead be instruments of righteousness. Now, when I think of instruments, I think of John playing on the piano or playing the drums, and I think of him making such beautiful, beautiful music and noise. But what that is I think it's also a metaphor for speech as well. We need making our speech a speech of righteousness. We need to be lifting others up through our speech, not breaking them down, not tearing them apart, not gossiping, not slandering others, but lifting them up, showing them the love of God through our speech, through our love and our actions. So through this, we should also be instruments of righteousness, not only to believers, as we talked about in 1 Timothy, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example. But we should also be examples to non-believers. Something that someone told me, or maybe I saw, whatever, is that people who don't believe in God, they don't pray, they don't read their Bibles, and they don't know Christ. They don't know Him. But who they do know is you. They met you, they know you, they talk with you. So you have to be Jesus. Now, you're not going to be perfect, but you have to be Jesus to them. You have to be Christ-like to them. You have to show them the love of God and who God is like, so that they know, okay, well, if he or she is, they changed a lot. They used to be this person who, talked bad about people behind their back, would go around doing all these bad things, was mean, was a bully, was all these terrible things. But now they've changed. What happened? Why did they change? And how can I change that too? So you are the example, not only to believers, but also to the non-believers. Set the example to them as well. I think it's time to dismiss the small groups here in a second.
The thing I will say about that is, especially to, like you said, to non-believers, and this is kind of, I would think, how Christianity kind of gets a bad rep today, but this is why it's so incredibly important to conduct yourself and to use your speech correctly in a manner that is Christ-like. Because to somebody that doesn't know Christ, they don't know that you're being hypocritical. They don't know that what you're doing goes against your faith. What they see that action and they associate it with Christianity rather than on the individual. Obviously, as Christians, we can see another Christian doing something that's against the faith, and we go, well, they're just being hypocritical, right? They're just having a bad day. They're having a wrestle with sin. And we can see that, and we can place it on the individual. But with non-believers, they see that, and they associate it with Christ. And we know the goodness of this. We know the goodness of God. We know what He's like. So it's our job as Christians to represent Him correctly, right? So others can come to know Him. Because if I was somebody that was not a believer, and I saw half the things that so-called Christians do, then I don't believe that I would like Christianity all too much. but I do know what he's like. Because the reason I'm even here today is because I met somebody that was so amazingly wonderful and in touch with God that they start bringing me to church. And it's through that start that I came to know Christ. Be like Christ to somebody. You might be the only person that is like Christ in their life. There's a lot of people that are in very unfortunate situations. And on that happy note, let's dismiss.